We're live.
Good afternoon and welcome to this fourth meeting of the Budget Review Committee. We are meeting for the first time in person, and it's a little different than we are accustomed to, but it's good to be able to see folks and to see them in their in this natural setting, if you will, or unnatural setting, whichever. We're going to start this afternoon. The only thing on our agenda for today is our add-delete list. But before we get to that, I'm going to ask the Clerk of Council, Sandra Davis, to call the roll.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Mayor Pro Tem Allen, Barnes, CRABB, here, Davis, Garrett, House,
Here.
HUFF, Thomas,
Here.
Thompson,
Here.
and Woodson. We have 2 members that are not present at this time, so there are 8. Did I hear Woodson? Yes. We have 8 members present for this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. When we were doing this virtually, it was at this point that I would say, please mute your mic. If you have not used one of these, it's the button on the right-hand side that will turn it on. It'll turn red, and then when you're finished, if you will hit it again and go off, I think that will help us all out. As we get started, I would like to call on our mayor, Mayor Henderson, to bring us some words of greeting.
Thank you, Madam Budget Chair. And first, let me just say to the council, what a tremendous job all of y'all have done. This has been a very unusual year. I get so tired of hearing the word unprecedented, but it's the only one that applies. And we still are in the midst of a very, very uncertain time. And in that vein, what I would offer up to this council for their consideration is a thought. And the thought is that as uncertain as our revenue streams are, and as we really have no benchmark to go by as we continue to try to anticipate what those revenues will look like, one thought that I would like to submit to this council for their consideration is to hold the entire add-delete list in abeyance until such time that council determines that it can be addressed and adopted. I don't think that precludes us from going through it here to discuss some of the items. But I think what that does is it allows this body to reconvene in 3 months. So you'll have 1 quarter behind you that you can be able to identify some trends, see what revenue streams are recovering more quickly, maybe others a little more slowly. And then when you get to the 6 months, to the mid-year, you would have the advantage of being able to say that you have dissected the first quarter and then use that as a somewhat of a benchmark against the second quarter to see which way things are trending. And that way you can have more confidence, I think, and feel better about some of the items on the add-delete list. And of course, any add-delete list items that are revenue neutral obviously would not necessarily need to be impacted by that. But if council were to choose to continue with the add-delete list each item today, which is fine, that's your prerogative, I would ask that you at least consider perhaps delaying the recurring expenses, anything to do with any payroll or anything that's going to be payable on a regular monthly basis. And the reason is because we've got a pretty decent fund balance, reserve fund balance right now. we don't know how much we may have to dip into that as we move forward. So, again, I just want to congratulate you and thank you for the great job you've done for the citizens and lay that out there for your consideration as an approach to how we deal with the add delete list today. So thank you.
You know, Mr. Mayor, my grandmother used to say great minds run together, and our finance director's mind was running along the same lines as what you were saying, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute, if you will. But before we do that, I do want to call on our city manager if he has any words of wisdom for us this afternoon. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Budget Chair, and let me just say that I absolutely concur with what the mayor just said, and when we kicked off the budget review, the first meeting, I shared a list of good news. I shared a list of what I consider bad news, and not just bad news for Columbus, but bad news for other cities that I named specifically across Georgia. Not just bad news for cities and counties. I shared with you bad news that was coming down from the state of Georgia. And since that time, I've repeatedly sent to all of the elected officials and department heads bad news articles that were coming from cities across the state and positions that they were taking at that time regarding furloughs and reductions in workforce and employees taking salary wage cuts and the unemployment rate, how it's skyrocketed. And so, as I agree with the mayor, I wanted to just say that I hope that you have noticed that not a single general government department head has appeared before this budget review committee. And that is because I kept sharing news with not just general government department heads, but I shared news with elected officials about the state of the nation, the state of our state, and the state of cities and counties, and more specifically the state of Columbus. And I shared with them that we are no different from those other cities and counties in Georgia. And I urged them to let's work together and get through this budget year, and maybe some of those things they've got on their wish list, they can come back in a future year when things are better. And I think they agreed, and so they didn't come forward. And then I shared with them that I did not think there would be an add delete list. I said, I don't think council is going to do an add delete list, and that's another reason we just need to work together. Well, week after week, they've watched an add delete list, and they really started emailing and texting and calling me during the last budget meeting. For example, and I'm going to be specific because even during the budget meeting, the finance director texted me and said, I really need that position that we talked about if they are going to have an add delete list. And I had other public works. They wanted to be on this agenda today. I talked to them as late as Friday night at 6 o'clock because they wanted to be on this agenda because of their needs since there's an add delete list. And so I really feel like I didn't do them justice by allowing them to get on the list and ask for items like the others, that they would have an opportunity to get on the add delete list. And so I wanted to say that to say to you that I agree with the mayor, and if we're going to have an add delete, I wish that, and I told them to come prepared to talk today. But if there's going to be an add delete list today, or if it's going to be later, I want them to have their opportunity to share with you their needs and concerns. And so as I end this, I will just repeat that I kind of shared with you in my opening remarks from Dr. Jeffrey Dorfman, an economist for Governor Brian Kemp, where he says if there's a recession, now is not the time to say we have this extra revenue, let's start a new program, be conservative in budgeting, make sure you have money in the bank, do not assume your revenue will continue to grow in the coming years, do more one-time things and less ongoing programs. If we have a recession, the stock market will not keep going up, so if your pension plan is underfunded, it will not get better. And so I say that if we work together, as I've said to the department heads, we can get through the financial challenges presented to us by this unprecedented pandemic and get back to a sense of normalcy. Thank you, Madam Budget Chair.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. I do want to remind our listening audience of the procedures that we have followed during this and will continue to follow as we come through with this. We have, as you know, the mayor working with the city manager and the finance director, the deputy city managers, put together a proposed budget. They presented that to us the end of April, and for the 4 Tuesdays in May, we have talked about, we have done the budget hearings. We put together a list that we call the add delete list, which for the most part is self-explanatory. Those items that are presented to us as people come before us and request additional items or changes in the budget that was proposed by the mayor. We have added some things on that list, and we have deleted some things on that list. Each week as we have done that, that's all we did, was we put them on a list. And today is the day that we go through that list and make the decision of what are we going to do. Are we going to add this? Are we going to delete it? Or what are we going to do? And then in the month of June, we will have what the state of Georgia requires and calls the Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearings. And that's when the taxpayers in Muskogee County can come before us and make their, give us their thoughts and ideas about what we are proposing as the final budget. And then the last, I think it's the last meeting that we have in June, we will vote on the budget. There will be announcements in the ledger about what we're doing and how it's doing and all of those kinds of things. When we get to that point, I'm sure the finance director will give us those exact dates and times and where those meetings are going to be. But today, we do have this list before us. One of the things that the finance director and I talked about that I would throw out for the council's consideration is that as we go through the add delete list, if an item does not require any additional funding, there are some items on this list that are budget neutral and do not include any ongoing funds. Those might be, and I'm saying that because it's your vote, council, of what to do, approved today. If there are some things on this list that in order for us to do our fiduciary responsibility, we're going to take some study. For example, there are a couple of things on the list that want us to do to make some changes to the pension plan. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not saying, okay, let's do that, because there's been no study of that and what it means to us. And of course, the other thing is with the financial situation that we're in, with the state of Georgia requiring their departments to come up with a 14.5% cut in their budget, we're not sure what's going to happen. So what the finance director and I are suggesting that we do is that we go through this list today, and that if there are items on this list that you, as the counselor, what we typically do is to say, if I put the item on the list, then I'm asked to speak to it and to either make a motion to remove it or whatever. But we're going to ask that you, that all of those items that we do not take action on today not disappear, but that we come back on September the 29th. And the reason I'm saying September the 29th is that you remember that in months that have 5 Tuesdays in them, that last Tuesday is generally a work session. And that we come back on September the 29th and take another look at those items that may have been left on the add delete list. There's some of the items on this list that I have had counselors already say to me, I want to take that off completely. There's some that may need to stay on here and let us revisit. We typically do not do that. We typically do not revisit the budget and the add delete list until mid-year at most. But what we are proposing today is that we have a budget review session on that September the 29th meeting, that it be part of the council meeting, that it be scheduled as of today, and that we come back to take another look at this. That will give us, as the mayor said, several months' experience, if you will, in this financial situation. We are not sure exactly where we stand because of some of the reports that we get from the state government are a month later. And so this would give us 5 or 6 months of the financial crisis to make some decisions about what we want to do. And then to come back the second time in January, and I think it's the 26th, is the last Tuesday in January, when we typically would have the question of the mid-year adjustment. And that would give us 2 more times when we look at what's going on and we see if it's something that we can do or if it's something that we need to move on. I've also had several of the counselors say to me, let's use some of the time between now and the end of September or now and the end of January and take a look at and study some of the items that have come before us. So that basically is the proposal that we would put before you. I'd like to hear from the counselors, and I think, let's see, how do we do this? Y'all want to raise your hand, or you want to, and I will call on you and hopefully do it in order. Let me get a piece of paper so I can get the order. I first saw Councilor CRABB.
Has this new protocol been discussed with the city attorney? Or does it need to be?
You mean, is it legal? I don't know if the city attorney wants, I think that we have the authority to change the budget at any time the council cares to do that, but I don't know. Mr. City Attorney, would you like to respond to that?
I'll be glad to. You've got to pass a fiscal year budget in June before July 1 under the charter. But if you need to address it in 3 months for possible amendments or in 6 months, you can do that. It's purely the pleasure of council. But remember, again, it's an annual budget for a 12-month fiscal year period.
And in case I didn't make it clear, we would go through the usual procedures of adopting this budget, of having the Taxpayer Bill of Rights meetings and all of those kinds of things. Adopt the budget, adopt the millage rate as we typically do, but then come back in September to take another look and see where we are, and if there's something that we did not approve in the budget process, can we do something with it now? Does that help at all, Counselor? Anybody else? Counselor Davis.
So Michael, okay. Well, first of all, I appreciate the mayor and the city manager and your comments. I think you're spot on. I think it's prudent and wise and understanding exactly the points that you've made. As far as the question about the process, we do have a process in place, and it's part of the budgetary ordinance requirements, and I think it's set up in such a way that without going through the budget process, there needs to be an approval of the mayor, the city manager, or the finance director, which is actually in line with what we're talking about, because I'm sure that they would make a recommendation to us to move forward. So it does meet those requirements. Outside of that, I don't think we really have a midterm budget review from that standpoint. It's usually in the form of either an emergency request or it's brought to us in the form of a recommendation. I'm pretty sure that's what as far as the budgetary ordinance requirements go, that's the process. Am I right, Mr. City Attorney?
Mr. Attorney, you want to respond to that?
Well, that is true. It would come in the form of a recommendation, but this council can pass an ordinance at mid-year or in 3 months after the first quarter of the fiscal year if the council deems it's necessary to make formal amendments. That would be added funds or deleted funds from the fiscal year budget. It certainly can be a recommendation of the administration or finance.
I think under the process, it is set up in such a way that it's very appropriate during this situation and the times we're in, because I believe that our executive management would be able to take they would be able to take a close look at all these requests at the right time appropriately, because I don't think they're all coming at once. They may come at different times depending on the quarter, but I think it would be appropriate, the way it's set up, that they would bring these requests to us if needed with their recommendation. Personally, I think that's the way to do it. I don't know how the rest of the council members feel about that, but that is a very financially sound process that's in place.
Anyone else care
Right
to
here.
speak to this? Counselor Barnes?
You know, this is something that all areas are experiencing because we're in unprecedented times right now. So I think that what you outlined is very prudent for us to follow because it gives us some wiggle room and adjustments. And so I would think that this would be something that we, as a council, would all agree to something like this here.
Anyone else? Counselor Woodson?
Just want to make sure we clarified. In the request that's being made is if anything in there that's neutral, we don't have to take from the fund balance. We would approve that today. Anything that will require from the fund balance, the reserves, we would delay that, if I'm understanding correctly. And then any of the ones that we want to delete today, that's what we'll do. Is that correct in the process?
Yeah. The ones that, well, as you look at the add delete list, for
Correct.
example, items 1, 2, 3, and 4 are some reclassifications that are budget neutral.
So they
I think that we could approve those as of today.
Okay.
Then there's one that the police department was a $42,000 increased clothing allowance. That would not be approved today, but it would not disappear completely. We may come back in September and say, hey, we've had a windfall, let's do that, or we may not. So it's just one of those, as Councilor Barnes said, we're pretty fluid here. As long as we have our city attorney to keep us legal, and you will, won't you, city attorney? To
Yep.
keep us legal, I think we'll be okay.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the reason why I mentioned it, to make sure we're on the same understanding. And I think if we call out the numbers that are neutral, we can just go ahead and approve those and then make a motion to delay the others until mid-year then, and do that.
But as I said, there's several of the items that are on the list that I've had councils already say to me, I want to pull that from the list. So what I would suggest that we do, Mr. City Attorney, do you think at this point that we may need a motion of some kind to set that September date, or just the city manager and the mayor recognize that we want to come back at that time and revisit this? And I don't know that we need any formal action, do we?
No, you don't need to vote on any date today. What you will need to vote on is your actual motion, whether it's to take these budget neutral things and put them into the budget or not.
Okay. Okay, then,
One more. Are we gonna start first with the deletion, because I have one that I want to remove?
what I would suggest that we do, perhaps in the interest of time, is let's start at the beginning of the list and go through the list, and then as you have either things you want to delete or is things that you want us to hold off on, let's do it that way. I think that would be a little more, I can keep up with it better. Anybody else? Councilor CRABB.
Thank you. I was going to recommend that maybe if a counselor has something to delete, we go ahead and delete those, because then we don't have to address them again. And then secondly, have Angelica give us the numbers of those that are budget neutral, and we can address those in one vote possibly, or if we wanted to pull one of those items, and then whatever's left, then we address them down the list. Just
Whatever, however you guys want to do it, I'm up for it.
You're the chair. You can decide.
Well, and
That was just my
one of the other
recommendation.
things is, Mayor Pro Tem, I don't have a watch, so will you sort of help me watch the time so that we don't run over? Can you do that for me? Thank you. Let's start and see how we go, okay? And you guys are knowledgeable enough that I think we can do this. Let's start with item number 1. Finance Director, do you want to speak to that? You want to start us down the list?
Sure. So the first item on the list is a deletion. It's a funding correction in the real estate department for a position that was not included in the mayor's recommended budget. However, the funding was still listed there in the amount of $59,494. This actually adds back to the fund balance 0.11 days.
Any discussion of this item? Any action that you care to make? Somebody needs to make a motion either to approve this deletion or not.
And
Okay,
to
Mayor
the
Pro
motion.
Tem has
Second.
moved to approve it.
Just to the motion, just a clarification. What we're doing is actually deleting and adding back to the fund balance, correct?
That's correct.
Second on the motion.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Those in favor of item number 1, deleting the 59,494 in real estate, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Finance Director?
Next item on the agenda is a staff correction. There's a reclassification of one payroll technician in the fire department, a G12 position being reclassified to an employment coordinator G14, and this item is budget neutral.
I make that motion that we
Approve item 2.
approve it. Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 2. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Third item on the agenda is a reclassification of one police HR technician, grade 12, to an employment coordinator, grade 14. This item is also budget
Motion.
neutral.
Hold, I'm going to ask you to hold until the Finance Director
Gotcha,
reads the
gotcha.
item, okay? So that everybody will know what it is. So go ahead, Finance Director.
So item number 3 is the reclassification of one police HR technician, grade 12, to an employment coordinator, grade 14. This item is budget neutral.
Motion.
Counselor Barnes moves approval, and Counselor Woodson seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The fourth item on the list is a reclassification for 3 communication technician 3 positions in the sheriff's office. They're grade 10s being reclassified to grade 11. This item is also budget neutral.
Counselor Woodson has moved approval. Counselor Barnes has seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Number 5 on the list is an addition by Counselor Woodson for the District Attorney's Office. It was to add one full-time victim advocate, grade 14, at a cost of $46,940.
Counselor Woodson, do you wish to speak to that?
Is this the one that the mayor and yourself, budget, city manager would like for us to hold off until September?
This is
That's
one
why I
of the
was asking.
kinds of items that I think that we can revisit in September to see if we have the funding to do that. This is the type item I was talking about.
Right, that's why I was trying to clarify earlier. And based on the mayor's comments and the city manager and our budget chair, I'm going to go ahead and delay it because I do not want to get to the point where we're financially struggle and we'll have to lay off employees. That's what I'm worrying about with the economy the way it is. So I still do want to bring it back, but I'll delay it for now.
Mr. City Attorney, I'm thinking that we probably need a motion then to delete this with the understanding that it may be brought back sometime later during the fiscal year.
Yeah, that would be appropriate on this one and all of these as you go down.
So do you want to move what I said?
Yeah, whatever you said.
And Counselor House has seconded that?
And may I say something?
Sure.
I just want for the district attorney and anyone else that I placed on here that's not mutual, to please understand we're in a tight position right now. We're being told by our finance director, our mayor, our city manager, our co-chair, how concerned they are and worried. And we don't want to be like any other company or someone else that lay off people because we spend more than we should in our budget. Please keep in mind it's going to come back. It's just not today. Thank you.
I've had the counsel of the mayor pro tem who said that maybe what we ought to do is what has been suggested instead of going through now these item by item, that if there are those that we need to delay. Mayor pro tem, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if anybody wants to talk about one of them, let's pull that out. But the rest of them, let's make a motion to revisit later in the year and move this a little quicker.
Okay, let's do it that way then. If there is one of these items that you particularly wish to speak to, take a look at it and let's get that item number. We'll come back and it doesn't necessarily mean you want to add it. It just means you want to talk about it.
Right.
You may want to add it or you may want to delete it completely. For example, Mr. City Manager, I understand that item 11, which is the Elections Department requested a full-size SUV. Would you speak to that and to what has happened on that, and we can take action on that one?
Thank you, Madam Budget Chair. We were able to look at the various departments. We identified a fairly new van with very low mileage on it that could better be used in elections, and that department was willing to give up that van. And I had them to get with Elections Director Nancy Boren. She looked at the van and she's really excited about it. And so we are going to transfer that van from information technology to elections. And she has indicated through email and text message that she's very pleased and that will satisfy the need.
So Councilor Woodson could make a motion to delete item 11.
Yes, that's the one I wanted to
Okay.
delete. And City Manager, I just want to say publicly, thank you so much for working.
Hold a minute, Councilor Woodson. Councilor Woodson has made the motion to delete item 11. Is there a second? Okay. Now, discussion, Councilor
Okay.
Woodson.
Thank you. I
I'm
just want to
sorry.
say to the City
Ma-
Manager, thank you.
Madam Chair, excuse me. I'm sorry, we had started with number 5 and had the motion and second to delay that one. Are we just gonna
We're going to
hold on
I tell you what,
making
let's
motions,
do,
or how are we gonna do
let's back up. This is a new procedure for us. Let's take care of item 5. As you have said, the motion was already on the table, and then we'll come back to this item 11, okay? Item 5 is the district attorney.
I made the motion.
We have a
You could
motion and a
withdraw
second.
your motion if
Woodson
you wanted
and
to.
House made the second.
I'm sorry?
Councilor Woodson made the motion and Councilor House made the second.
Do you want to withdraw that motion, Councilor
Sure.
Woodson? Councilor Woodson has withdrawn that motion. Is it appropriate with the seconder?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
so
it
that
is.
motion has been withdrawn. We now have on the table a substitute motion for item 11. So it has been properly moved and seconded. Councilor
I'm
Woodson.
sorry, can you go back and state who made the motion and who made the second?
I made the motion.
And I think Councilor
House.
Barnes made the second.
And then I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to say to the City Manager, thank you for working so diligently with the election. She was very pleased and called me over the weekend and let me know it was taken. And that was the one I was talking about removing. So thank you.
I think that what happened with this particular item shows how our staff works together. Within a week's time, this was done. And Mr. City Manager, I appreciate your efforts in this. If this motion passes, I appreciate your efforts in this department. The motion on the table is to delete item 11. Any further discussion? Those in favor of deleting item 11, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 11 is deleted. Are there other items that you want to completely remove? Councilor CRABB.
I'd like to make a motion to delete item 14, the reduction in Oxbow Creek subsidy and the increase in the Bull Creek subsidy.
In addition to item number 14 in the general fund, that would also be a motion to delete items number 1 and number 2 under the other funds for both the Bull Creek Fund and the Oxbow Creek Fund. That would be page number 3.
I make
And,
that- I
and
make
under
motion
that
also.
was just a method of ensuring what the original item was. Okay.
Yes.
So Counselor Crabb, do you want to amend your motion to include item 14 on the
Yes, I do.
general fund and items 1 and 2 on the other funds list?
Yes.
And Counselor Woodson seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Anybody else have?
Madam Budget Chair?
Counselor Barnes and then Counselor Davis. Counselor Barnes, you might.
I always had to be reminded of that. Item, give me a minute, 13 on the first sheet, and two on the second one, second sheet.
Can we do just one at the time? Let's do item 11 and then we'll go back to item 2 next, okay? Counselor Barnes has moved item, I'm sorry,
That was a,
item 13.
13,
Is there a second?
To the motion?
The motion.
To the motion.
Is that a second?
I don't,
We don't have a second.
I thought she gave a second.
Yes.
I'll
The
say it.
delay.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, Counselor Barnes made the motion, Mayor Pro Tem Allen seconded it. Is there discussion? Counselor Davis.
Yes, I wanted to, I think it was brought up, and we didn't ask this question when this was presented to us, but I'm not, I'm still trying to work through this request of software. Sometimes you feel like you can, with a little magic, you can use Excel or a spreadsheet or whatever, and you can put these things together. And look, I have a lot of confidence in our IT department. They can do amazing things. So the question would be if there's a possibility to create something in-house, the IT department through a spreadsheet or Excel that would do the same thing, and you can make the adjustments randomly and manage this request. I don't see why you can't, but I do ask that question, is it possible?
Counselor Davis, I believe the Assistant Director of IT, Mr. John Broom, is here and can answer that question for you, or we could take this as a referral to the delay and come back at the September date with a more definitive answer.
And I'm okay with that. I think it is on the delay list, but it's not on the delay list. There's a motion and a second to delete it, but I still ask the question, is there a possibility? So if I choose to delete it today, that's the reasoning behind my vote.
Counselor Barnes, are you deleting this or are you delaying it? Yeah.
That's what I thought.
I believe that and again, Mr. City Attorney, keep me legal here. I believe that even if it is delayed, it can be brought back at a later time in the fiscal year. Is that correct?
Absolutely, as long as you don't approve it going into the budget today.
Well, I think,
You didn't second it.
I second it. I did.
Mayor Pro Tem
We
seconded
both
it.
did at the same time.
We have a motion and a second to delete item 13.
Madam
Any
Chair,
Any further?
may I make a statement?
But I have ask a question.
Hold it, folks. Mayor Pro Tem.
What my statement was earlier, my intent was that anybody that has something on the list they want to specifically talk about now, then we would talk about that. Otherwise, we would vote on the list in its entirety to delay it till mid-year budget. That was my thought. Yeah, instead of going through them one at a time. So, is that okay with everybody? Okay. Yeah, so if you withdraw your motion, then we can take off the whole list in its entirety and vote to revisit them at mid-year. Is that okay?
I think the difference is, for example, and I'm going to again use item 11, we no longer need a motion to buy a full-size SUV. That has been taken care of. So that can come off the list in its entirety. This one, we may want to revisit. So, okay. Okay.
Madam Chair, if there are no other items, I would make a motion that the remaining items on all three lists be delayed until mid-year budget.
Are there any,
Comment.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, you made a motion.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a second to his motion? Councilor House has seconded it.
Madam Budget Chair, I think I was after Pops, but Councilor Allen, I guess, jumped in there. But actually, what I want to speak to would not coincide with what the councilor's proposing.
Okay, the motion that's on the table, the Mayor Pro Tem is going to repeat it for us.
The motion is, unless there is any other item on the add and delete list to be discussed today, that we carry over or delay the add and delete list until the mid-year budget.
I have an item.
Okay,
I think Councilor House seconded.
and Councilor House seconded. Mr. City Manager?
Madam Budget Chair, number 3 on the third page, I do want to discuss that today. That's the Development Authority allocation for CVD. You had asked me to bring back a solution.
Okay, number 3 would, let's do this.
Yeah.
We're going to pull number 3 on the other funds list. Are there other items on any of these lists that you would like to pull?
Yes, ma'am. I have an item on the
Councilor
first
Davis.
list. Thank you, Councilor Allen, for adding that point about request. The item number 6 and 7 is the request by the sheriff. The 6 is actually a motion to add. 7 is a motion to delete. I'm looking at that. That's a request by our sheriff. She's an elected officer. She's a constitutional officer. That is actually budget neutral that she can do within her budget. So I would like to bring that up as a consideration. That's exactly what that is. She requested it. She's just asking our permission to do it, and it's budget neutral. So she is requesting to do a pay reform, and she's doing it by deleting 3 positions. And if the sheriff is here, would like to speak on that, is that?
Hold a minute, Mr. Davis.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Davis has requested to pull items 6 and 7. We'll pull those items. Any other pulls?
Yes.
Councilor Huff.
Madam Budget Chair, on number 12, the Clerk of Superior Court is also a constitutional officer, and it was brought to our attention that in the fact that they generate a lot of revenue in that area, that during their audit that they had, it was recommended by the auditor to add this person as a checks and balance as far as who takes in money, who makes deposits, and all of that good thing.
You are requesting to pull item 12.
Yes.
Any other pulls?
Oh, one last point.
Councilor Huff.
In comment to the software for the clerk of council also, was.
Wait. All we're doing at this point are pulling items. We're going to talk about them in a minute, okay?
Okay.
Any other pulls?
Madam Budget Chair, I would like to pull item number 15, the police longevity pay reform, to revisit at a later time.
Okay, we pull number 15.
Excuse me. I thought the motion was that we were going to approve them all in one shot, the ones that we were going to discuss later. So why are you wanting to pull 15? Because don't you want that to be included in what we discuss at midterm? So we wouldn't pull that from the list. It's my understanding.
That's correct. If you pull it from the list, that means we want to discuss it this afternoon and possibly take action on it.
Okay.
So do you want to, what is your choice? What is your pleasure?
Mine is, okay, I'm not understanding. I thought we were pulling to revisit in September.
No, what we are pulling is to revisit today.
Okay.
And what we're going to do then, if you don't pull item 15 to talk about today, then under the Mayor Pro Tem's motion, we will bring that back in September if you choose to do that.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Barnes.
Yeah, I got a question. The ones that I've done, I've already gotten with the finance clerk. The two that I pulled was to be pulled and discussed in September. That was my intent. Was I clear on that?
That's what we have
Okay, good.
done. Right.
Okay.
What we're pulling are those items that we wish to discuss today. The other items that are on the list that we do not pull, we are deleting them, and they will be brought back at a later date. Councilor Huff.
Yes, Councilor Barnes was mentioning that he wanted to pull 13 until September, but I'd like to have a little discussion today. You got to vote it up or down today. Is there any room for discussion? I just needed to make a comment. No, I don't know what protocol is. All I wanted to do was.
I'm not sure we have a protocol,
Okay.
Councilor Huff.
Well, since we don't, let me say this then. I'm in agreement with Councilor Barnes pulling it to September. I just wanted to make the comment to Councilor Davis's point that the clerk sent out an email from IT stating that there is no fixing what they have. They can't take an Excel, they can't take anything else. That in 8 months, in about 8 months' time, the system will be antiquated, and they won't be able to do anything in that office. So based on what's coming up, and this being May, we still have a little time. I think they said they have 8 months, but, the clerk can verify the email that she sent out to us, saying that she got with IT, and IT vetted all of the information and said this is a necessity going forward for her office within an 8 month time period.
I think that this is a perfect example of what I was trying to not get into, is that there are some aspects of this issue that we probably need to delve into and to look at and perhaps even study between now and September.
Okay.
So that would be,
I'm good with that. I just wanted council to know it's something we really need to delve into by September.
And I think according to what the city attorney has said, even if we pull something off this, if we revisit the budget, you can bring it back. I mean,
Okay.
a counselor can always say, I want to move that we do such and such, and take your chances on getting a second and a positive vote.
Okay, so
if that's the way we're gonna work it today, then on item 12, I'd like to revisit in September, not lose it today.
Madam Finance Director, are you as confused as I am?
I believe, what I understand, the direction of council and currently where we stand, council has approved items 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the general fund. Council has also approved items number 11 for deletion, and also approved item number 14 for deletion on the general fund page, as well as items 1 and 2 on the other funds page as it relates to item number 14 on the general fund page. Those are all of the action items that I have denoted that council has taken. All the other items on the list, I was under the impression that council would delay those items with the exception of the items being pulled, which was at the request of Councilor Davis, items number 6 and 7, since those two items combined are budget neutral. And I think that's all of what I have. So all the other items besides item number 6 and 7 would be delayed, is my interpretation of all of the discussion that has just been had.
Madam Chair, I think we do have also that item 12 was to be pulled. And then we did have a motion and a second with regards to item 13, but were we going to hold off on that? I'm not sure.
I think Councilor Huff wanted to put item number 12 on the delay list.
Hold a minute, let's let the
If I may.
Finance Director.
I thought the last comment from Councilor Huff
Yeah.
was to put item number 12 on the delay list as
Yeah.
well as item number 13.
Right, Councilor Barnes had said he wanted to delay that, and I misunderstood, so I agree with him to delay both. He asked to delay 13, and I would also like to delay 12.
So the only items that would require action in the form of a delay would be item number 8 in the general, on the first page in the general fund, which would be for the Public Defender's Office, the increase in operating expenses. Would be item number 9, which is the building improvements for the police department in the public safety building. Would be item number 10 for the police department, which would have been an increase in the clothing allowance from $600 to $1,000 annually. Would be on the delay, item number 12, which would have been 1 full-time deputy clerk 2 for the clerk of Superior Court. Also on the delay list would be item number 13, the purchasing of the board management software for the clerk of council. Item number 15, which would have been to update the police longevity pay reform for year 3 to $3,500. That completes the delay items on the first page. On the second page, the items to delay would be the purchasing of the 9 LifePak defibrillators for the fire and EMS department. Would be the purchasing of 31 vehicles with 26 installation packages for the police department. And that completes the items for delay.
What is the status of item number 3 on the other funds page?
That was pulled. I'm sorry, I did not mention that. That was pulled by the city manager for discussion today.
So the ones for discussion today would be item number 3 on the other funds page, items 6 and 7 on the general fund page.
Yes, ma'am.
Any others for discussion today?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilor Davis.
We're on the second page now. I'd like to have a discussion on item 1 that the finance director said was delayed.
All right, item 1 on the
From a request by
on
fire.
the OWAS funds is for discussion today.
Okay.
Any other items for discussion today? Seeing none, the Mayor Pro Tem has made a motion that all of the other items on these 3 pages be revisited in September and/or January.
To
I'm
the
sorry,
motion.
and that includes item number 13, the board management? I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Item
Because
number
it's so-
13 would be revisited in either September or January.
Okay, I just have a concern because I have a timing.
I'm sorry,
Yes, ma'am.
you're going to need to hold. Councilor Davis, you had something else you,
Just clarification, Madam, the motion that you just mentioned, we are pulling 6 and 7 and 1 that I requested, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
anything else, Councilor?
Just to make sure, we are delaying number 5, correct?
Yes, that's on the delay list.
Madam Finance Director, would you go through this list one more time
All right.
so that everybody knows where we are?
Okay. So, so far, items number 1, on the first page, items number 1, 2, 3, and 4 have been approved by council. Items number 5, has been delayed. Item number 6 and 7 has been pulled for discussion today. Items number 8, 9, and 10 have been delayed. Item number 11 has been deleted from the list. That was official action by council to delete. Item number 12 has been delayed. Item number 13 is delayed. Item number 14 has been deleted by council as official action by the request of Councilor CRABB. Item number 15 is on the delay list. On the second page, item number 1 has been pulled for discussion today. Item number 2 has been delayed. On the third page, items number 1 and 2 have been deleted today in conjunction with item number 14 on the first page. And item number 3 has been pulled for discussion today.
That's what we're voting on with the Mayor Pro Tem's motion. Okay? Are you ready to vote? All those in favor of the motion say aye. All those opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Now, let's go back and we will we have pulled for discussion. Our first discussion will be items 6 and 7. Councilor House and Councilor Davis had put those on the list. Either one of you wish to speak to either of those items?
I do, Madam
Councilor Davis.
Budget Chair. I do want to make sure that I am confirming with the sheriff that that is her intention and that's what she's requesting.
That what's her intention?
What she brought forth and the way that it's described, 6 and 7, that's the intent of these requests. Add and delete.
Thank you. Yes, sir, that is my intent.
Okay. Madam Budget Chair, again, the only reason I'm bringing this up for a vote now is because it is budget neutral. Actually, it I guess takes a little bit more away from your budget, Sheriff, but just a little bit with the 3 positions, but it covers your request. So the way I look at that is you got enough to work with.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that. But hopefully we can get that back in a clothing allowance in September when that comes up, because we had a 0 clothing allowance budget. So when the chief requested an increase, then hopefully we can get that same increase in September, and that would pretty much cover the whole amount. Thank you.
That's on the revisit list.
Okay. Madam Budget Chair, then I'd like to make a motion to approve 6 and then a motion to delete approve the deletion of 7, which would make it budget neutral.
Okay, Counselor Davis has voted to approve items 6 and 7 with a second by Counselor House. Is there discussion of, other discussion of items 6 and 7? Seeing none, those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
For the record, item number 6 is to update the sheriff longevity pay reform to $3,500 for years 5 through 30. For the deputy sheriff positions that are grade 14, it only impacts those positions. And that is made budget neutral by the deletion of 3 deputy sheriff positions, which are also grade 14.
And I want to make sure that people who are listening, when we say delete 3 deputy sheriffs, it's the positions that are currently not filled. We are not firing and or laying off any deputy sheriff. Is that correct, Madam Sheriff? Okay. Did we,
I have a question.
It was voted on. Thought it was voted on.
did we vote?
Yes.
Okay.
I had a question now.
Counselor Woodson.
I just want to make sure, Angelica, so with us deleting item 7, that funding would then pay for item 6, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just needed to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next one that we need to discuss is from the OLOS funds, page 2, item number 1, which was to purchase 9 life pack defibrillators for the fire department. Discussion.
Yes, Madam Budget Chair, I asked for discussion there. And I want to make back to the last item that we just talked about. If the finance director, I'm sure y'all keep a record and make sure that those positions have been appropriately taken care of, and that, well, sometimes people ask to stay budget neutral and all, and then they come back and ask for more later. That's not acceptable. So that's kind of what I'm saying. The item 1 on the OLOS fund is, there's a cost here, but I'm looking at this as an emergency request. This is dealing with public safety. It is dealing with potential, well, this is a life-saving, these are life-saving apparatuses, the defibrillators. I would ask the question if the fire chief is here, if this is something that needs to be on the trucks today in order to save lives. And that's the only reason I'm looking at this request. It is a cost, it's out of the OLOS, but when it came to us such as an emergency request that it needed to be on the trucks to save lives. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Is there anyone here from the fire department? I can't. Okay. Counselor Woodson.
Councilmember Davis, when this was brought up.
Excuse me, Counselor Woodson, pull your mic down so we can.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Davis, when this was brought up for the 9 life pack distributor, I had asked him if it would be okay if we couldn't do it, the total 9 to go, at least 3 or 4 of them, and he said it was all right. So I don't think it's like an emergency right now. I think we could delay it for September. And if necessary, since he's not here and anyone to speak about it, they can always bring it back and we can always amend the budget.
One of the reasons I'm bringing it up is to make sure it is not an emergency need. I mean, we have the director of public safety here. If this can be delayed, I'm fine with that, but the way it was presented to this council was that this needs to be on the trucks and out in the field to save lives.
Counselor House.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I thought Acting Chief Lang commented that a delay was okay. He just wanted to make sure that it was on the list for consideration because he understood the finance impact. I mean, I don't want to speak for him, but I thought he actually said that. Latif?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am. Like Councilor House, I'm not going to try to speak for the interim chief. He's done an awesome job. I will say that when they turned in the items that they want to consider to be added to their budget, this was not one of the higher priorities. But he did make it very clear that the older machines that he has don't communicate with the hospitals as well, and that these really do help enhance life-saving efforts. But I don't recall him telling me that this is something that absolutely had to be done right now. I agree with with what Councilor Woodson said. If in fact he reaches out to Councilor Davis or to me and says that it is something that he does need at least 3 or 4 right now, we can still amend the budget. We can bring it back.
Okay.
Madam Budget Chair, with the words of the Public Safety Director, then I move that we add this to the delay list.
Okay, motion has been made to add this to the delay list, and Councilor Woodson has seconded it. Any discussion? Those in favor of adding this to the delay list, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And then the last one on the discuss today list is item number 3 from other funds, the Development Authority. And Mr. City Manager, was that yours that pulled that?
Yes. Yes,
Would
ma'am.
you speak to it?
Thank you, Madam Budget Chair. I had the opportunity to meet with the Chair of the Development Authority, Russ Carrica, and the Senior Vice President of Economic Development, Brian Solito, along with Deputy City Manager Pam Hodge and Finance Director Angelica Alexander, to talk about his last visit with you, his request with you, and on that meeting, unequivocally, Russ Carrica and Brian Solito agreed that tourism is economic development and it's important to keeping us competitive as we go through the pandemic. They agreed without question that we should use economic development funds to support the CVB over the next 12 months. And we agreed that $350,000 would be an appropriate amount to make available for draws from the CVB. But we all had the clear understanding that the CVB would have to pay the $350,000 back over time as the economy starts to come back, things start to get better. And so we agreed that a portion of the funding would come from a reallocation in the amount of $229,433, and then reduce the economic development fund reserves by $120,567 for a total of $350,000. And so again, we won't just write a check and send $350,000 if you agree, but if on a monthly basis, if the revenues come up short, let's say it takes them, they need $125,000 a month to operate. And so if they collect $100,000 and they're $25,000 short, they could draw $25,000. And the next month it may be that they only need to draw $15,000, and the next month it may be $50,000. And so, but there's $350,000 available to draw on, but they will have to pay the money back. And so, with that said, that would be our recommendation to you, and I will yield to the finance director to tell how that might work.
Exactly as you explained it, the terms and conditions of the specific agreement between the city, the development authority, and the CCVB would come back to council for approval at a later date. That would lay out the repayment terms and so forth. But as the city manager mentioned, that those would be funds that they would have to pay back to the city. The finance department currently collects the hotel motel money and distribute that money to the entities that it belongs to. So, very easy for us to handle the repayment.
Madam Budget Chair.
So, Mr. City Manager, is it your recommendation then that we approve item number 3 on this other funds?
I've consulted the mayor and laid this out to the mayor, and I think, Mayor, we agree that we should do this.
Well, there's not a whole lot I can add to the way it was put together. We do know that the CVB, one of the things that we wanted to see was that they were making some severe cuts and doing the best they could. And you may want to go into a little bit of detail of some of the things that the CVB is doing to try to help us help them. Because I think the feeling was we wanted to try to make certain, I mean, they're our marketing arm. We wanted to make certain that they could function, but at the same time, they needed to have some skin in the game, so to speak.
Yes. You're right, Mayor. It was said at the last meeting here that we wanted to make sure that, I think it may have come from Councilor Davis, but wanted to make sure that they've done all that they can do. And President CEO Peter Boughton laid out what they have done, and just a couple of things that they've done. They've reduced their budget by approximately 17%, and every staff member has taken a pay cut. And so they've done some pretty aggressive things to do their part to make sure they make it through this pandemic.
And if I might add, Mr. City Manager, the additional reduction was after the budget review meeting that they attended. And again, them taking a look at their budget to make sure that they had real skin in the game. And so the total reduction to include the 17 that they, additional reduction that they made after the council meeting is about 35%.
So they've really, they're concerned and they're prepared now for what they expect to come. And we can help them get through this together.
And it seems from what you're saying that this is not something that we need to postpone. We need to take an action one way or the other fairly quickly.
Well, and I think the finance director is saying we'll come back.
Well, from a budget standpoint, we just need to reallocate how the monies are currently presented in the budget. But the actual use of the money will come back at a later date for council's approval, and in that agreement, it'll lay out all the terms and conditions as far as the usage, the repayment plan, and so forth. And Councilor CRABB has a question.
Madam Budget Chair, I make a
Councilor
motion.
CRABB and Councilor Davis. I think Councilor Davis has been in line first, and then Councilor CRABB. Councilor
I'd like to make a motion. I think that it was brought to us, and I'm okay with the way it's been presented. It's being presented as a loan, but I would like to add in the motion that there be 2 installments to be paid and based on the ability to pay. But I think there needs to be a time frame that the money is paid back to the city. So it would be probably a 6 months installment. By then, we ought to be able to have a good understanding of what's going on in the hotel business here in the community as far as hotel motel tax. The first installment could be less if needed, and then the final installment could be another 6 months out. So it'll be in a total in a year that the money will be reimbursed to the city.
Now, I want to make sure, Finance Director, we're talking about them drawing on this as they need it. We're not talking about giving them a check to begin with.
No,
that's only a draw as they need it.
That's exactly right. They can draw as they need. It's a line of credit is what it is. but whatever amount they draw, they can make an installment payment in 6 months, some effort to pay down, and then completely pay the city back in a year from now.
Yeah, that'll all come back in the agreement.
Yep.
That council has to approve.
Right, but I think we need to make that clear today, that there needs to be a time frame involved in there.
Well, I think you would vote today to rearrange the money in the .25 mills, but we're going to bring back to you an agreement with terms, conditions, and so forth, and that's when this body would negotiate and agree. The council
Exactly, then we're
all
on,
those things.
we're on the same page.
Sure.
I vote to approve a line of credit under the conditions of the agreement.
That we're going to bring back to you.
Exactly.
Yes, yes.
Was there a second to that, to Councilor Davis' motion? You made a motion to approve item 3, is that right, Councilor Davis?
That's right.
Yes.
Was there, and the Mayor Pro Tem has seconded it. Councilor CRABB, you had discussion.
Thank you. It's my understanding that the Development Authority allocation, there's a portion that goes to the Chamber of Commerce and there's a portion that stays with the city. Is that correct?
There's a portion that goes to the Development Authority, yes, .25 mills, and .25 mills remains with the city.
Okay, so is this reducing the amount that the city sends to the Development Authority? Or is this coming out of the portion that is the city's?
Well, I'll tell you, I had that discussion with them, and so when we bring this back, it will likely be that it comes out of the portion that remains with the city, because even the .25 mills that remains with the city has to go through the Development Authority by law. And so knowing that we are going to be reimbursed by the CVB on terms, and we would just be holding that money and it's sitting there, then it makes sense, of course, if you agree, that we take it out of the .25 mills that remains with the city. But in discussing that with the Development Authority leadership, they are so supportive of this. They said if this body were to get hung up on where it comes out of this pot or that pot, then do 50-50, but we believe that it makes sense to come out of the .25 mills, since that money is sitting there and we can't use it, and they can only use it if we would send it to them to use it towards some project that you agree that makes sense. And so it makes sense to take it out of the .25 mills that remains with the city. That would be our recommendation.
I guess I got confused because you sat down and you discussed it with them, and so I thought you were getting an agreement from them for it to come out of their portion.
Well, it was, the approach was that it could be 50% from their portion, but 50% from the portion that we hold. But I guess the point that I'm making is that there's nothing we can do with what we hold but accumulate it. And because if some mega project was going to come and they needed that second, the 2.25 that we're holding, then they would come to you and say, we need the 0.25 that you're holding to help us make this deal work. And so we're just holding the money. And since we're holding it and they're going to have to pay it back to us, it makes sense that it just come out of the 0.25 that we're holding is all that I'm suggesting. But they don't even want to haggle over it. If it becomes a big deal, just get it done because it's important. That was their attitude about it.
Any other discussion? Okay, Councilor Davis made the motion to approve item number 3, and I believe, was it Councilor House, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving item 3 on the other funds list, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. As far as I can see, Finance Director, that includes the items that were pulled for discussion today. Is that correct?
That's correct. So that actually concludes the list. Action by council, official action by council regarding all the items on the list has been made either in the form of an approval, a deletion, or a delay.
Okay, Madam Finance Director, would you go through the calendar for the rest of the process that we need to follow for this budget? Before you do that, let me see if there is any further discussion by councilors of anything on the add delete list. Now you're on.
Right. So just very quickly to give an update as far as the dates. The next sort of action item that we have would be the advertisement of our FY21 budget as amended today by council. This advertisement will be made available in the newspaper on June the 2nd. Also in that advertisement will be the advertisement of our public hearings related to the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. The Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearings will be on the 9th of June. The first one will begin at 9 a.m. if necessary. That would be the first of 3 Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearings. Again, that's June 9th at 9 a.m. The second hearing, Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing, will be June 9th at 6 p.m. That will be a regular council meeting that will begin at 5:30, but we'll pause at 6 o'clock on the nose, hopefully, to conduct our second Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing. The next meeting by council will be on June 16th. That'll be at 9 a.m. That's a special call meeting. Also in that meeting at 9 a.m. at the start of that meeting will be our third Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing. We'll also officially adopt the budget. That will be the second reading of the budget ordinance on the 16th, as well as the first reading of the millage ordinance. And then June 23rd will be the last meeting of the council for the month of June, and that also begins at 9 a.m., in which the second reading of the millage ordinance would be adopted. A couple of things I want to just
before you leave the calendar meetings, if you will. Will this be available online, what you have just said?
Yes, ma'am.
And where online?
As far as the calendar or the budget as amended? The calendar is posted on the
ColumbusGA.org.
on the city's webpage, on the homepage, under the calendar section. That's where the calendar for the meetings are. And I'll make sure that I get with IT today to make sure that the June meetings are there as well.
And where will those meetings be?
Those meetings will be in the Civic Center. So currently where we are today is where all of these other meetings in June will be conducted.
I think it's important that we put out as much information as we can as to time and location of these particular meetings so that the community will know where they can come to have their input into the process.
Yes.
And then you said you had something else on this?
I forgot. Oh, I was just, it was in reference to the millage ordinance, slight change in that this year in terms of the installment date. Just wanted to remind council at the request of our tax commissioner, the first installment date will be moved from October 1st to October 15th, with the second installment being due on December 1st.
Any questions for the finance director, or for the good of the order? It is now 4:29. I did have a clock. We will reassemble here at 5:30 for the regular council meeting. And I think that I speak for the other, for myself and the other 9 counselors, how much we appreciate the effort that has been made to bring us together today by our various and sundry staffs. You've done a terrific job of making sure that we are properly distanced and that we have some hand sanitizer and all of those kinds of things. And we certainly do appreciate all that you've done to make that happen. We also appreciate the work of the other employees of the City of Columbus. This has been a trying time for some of you. It's been an unusual time for all of us as you find new ways of doing what you need to do. And we appreciate it. It has not gone unnoticed. And I want you to be sure that you are aware of that. We thank you for what you do for Columbus and the citizens that we represent. I heard a motion from the Mayor Pro Tem that we adjourn this and reconvene at 5:30, and a second by Councilor, wait, I'm having a wave back there. Ms. Finance.
Yes, ma'am. The only thing that I wanted to make mention of was where we ended today in terms of the fund balance days, where we begin at 72.52 days of estimated reserves. We end at 72.66 days.
Would you say that again?
Fund balance reserves, the beginning balance as we began these meetings was 72.52 days. And at the conclusion of today's meeting, that will be 72.66 days.
Very good. Anything else for the good of the order? We are adjourned until 5:30. Thank you.